In this video, I want to talk to you or give you some examples of distributive negotiation tactics. Now, just to recap, if you aren't certain about what is a distributive negotiation, please visit our video to learn more about that. But in summary, it's a scenario where you have a finite interest, right? An individual interest that cannot be expanded, that the more value I grab of that interest, the less value you have of that interest. Common scenario is when you're buying something. I pay more means I give more money. You receive more money, right? If I pay less, you receive less money. I pay less money, right? So that's a single element of value that if I give less, right, I gain. If I give more, you gain. So it's distributive in nature. You can't enlarge that pie, as they say. It's a fixed pie, okay? So that being said, distributive negotiations tend to be somewhat competitive, right? They tend to be characterized by what we call hardball tactics, right? And just to reiterate, if you haven't watched our video on what is negotiation strategy, it breaks down strategy into orientation, objectives, and tactics. Tactics are things you do to achieve objectives during the negotiation. So with that being said, we're identifying some tactics that you will commonly see in a distributive negotiation, okay? With the understanding that generally they are related to very competitive hardball tactics type activity, right? It's designed to beat the other person, to grab more value than the other person, right? Not like in an integrative negotiation where you seek a collaborative or cooperative type of situation or use tactics in that regard that seek to create additional value for both parties, okay? So with that being said, let's identify some examples. First, good cop, bad cop. We've all heard of this scenario. It's where one party in the negotiation seeks to be accommodating, right? But you oftentimes use a third party or outside party, or you actually play both roles yourself where you jump back and forth on being accommodating and friendly in some ways, but very stern and harsh and demanding in others, right? So you're playing these two positions off each other, right? They're very common in team-based negotiations where two or more people are negotiating with another person or another team, okay? Where you can play these differing attitudes or orientations off of each other, right, to create an effect in the other party, all right? Low ball, high ball, that is when one party in negotiation, or both parties, but one party in negotiation uses an extreme offer at the outset. And basically it's testing the waters to see how bad the other party needs the interest at stake, how informed they are about the true value of what you're negotiating over. So you take an extreme position that is in your favor, hoping that the other side is uninformed or needs it so badly that they simply accept your offer and you grab a lot of value in the scenario, right? But be careful with this. If the other party is well informed, it can seem somewhat offensive, right? It's like saying, I'll sell you this bottle of water for $10, right? Type scenario. Do they know how much the bottle of water is worth, right? It's a $1 bottle of water traditionally. They could be highly offended, right? So it could cause a procedural foul, right? Or create some undesirable emotions or feelings based upon the lack of procedural fairness there, okay? Bogey, that's when you feign not having interest, right? Feign not having interest in whatever you're negotiating over, feigning not having interest in negotiating at all. This isn't necessarily a hardball tactic, but it can be extremely useful in single item negotiations, particularly where you're in distributive negotiations where something's being sold, right? You feign interest in it to create the perception with the other party that, oh, you're not interested. The other party's certainly not going to be able to demand a premium. If anything, to gain your interest, they are going to have to try to identify some discount or identify some additional value for you. Okay, so that's the bogey. Nibble, that's when you're basically trying to get a little bit more right before the close of a negotiation, right? And you've worked out some hard details, some hard terms of the negotiation. There you are, you're ready to close, It's not quite a stall tactic or a holdout tactic. Rather, it's just one more thing I needed. Just one more thing. Can you throw this in? Just one more thing, right? And that's why they call it the nibble. You're nibbling just a little bit more of the value type scenario, but it's usually inconsequential in comparison to the overall deal, so the other party is willing to throw it in, okay? Chicken. Playing chicken. We all know the scenario of playing chicken to see who chicken's out first, right? Who averts course first. So in this one, you take a course of action and say, if this doesn't work, I'm out, right? I'm walking away from the negotiation. Okay, I'm playing chicken with you to see, are you going to balk first and say, okay, then I'll accept your terms. That type of thing, because I don't want you to leave, right? That's the negative scenario. Or is the other party going to go into it? A very competitive type of position, it can cause negotiations to fail, even if you both are within the zone of potential agreement at that time of using it. So be careful with that. But it can, in some scenarios, be successful if you read well in the other party's orientation that they are susceptible to that type of behavior. Okay, intimidation, right? That tends to be characteristic of an orientation, a very competing orientation in which you are simply trying to intimidate, make them scared, right? Make them anxious by you or your behavior, that type of thing. It can usually be carried out by showing anger, frustration, very aggressive type behavior to create that intimidation reaction in the other party. That's certainly a hardball tactic or a competitive behavior. And lastly, we call it the snow job, but basically it's overwhelming the other party with information. You're just dumping major amounts of information on them, right? Talking fast, handing them a bunch of documentation saying, and creating some level of urgency behind it, right? It seems overwhelming to them, right? It's a way to beat up on them mentally so that they're just, okay, enough. Whatever you say, I'll accept it. Okay, just give it to me simply. All right, that type of thing. So again, that's a very competitive hardball type of tactic to use. These are just some examples. There are any number of tactics that you'll see that can be distributive in nature, but once again, they're going to be characterized as being highly competitive in nature. If you are able to identify these, you are then able to come up with a plan for how to deal with them. And in a separate video, we address how to deal with distributive negotiation tactics.